Welcome to another episode of ZANTASTIC. This is the podcast where we talk about what makes you fantastic. Now, in the last episode, number 10, we talked about leadership, and I leaned a little bit into spirituality at the end there. And in this episode, I want to take that just another step further. In this episode, we are talking about basically how to be a leader in your own life, how to set direction, how to set vision, how to get to where it is that you want to go. If you're new here, my name's Kathy Zant. ZANTASTIC is just a play off of my last name. And even though I have been fairly active in the tech space and I can get into a database, I can hack a site, I can unhack a site, my real passion in life is unhacking yourself. When I was cleaning hacked sites, I used to joke that I cleaned up malware out of websites and my husband cleaned up malware out of people. That's what he did. He was a coach, a counselor, a therapist who used neurolinguistic programming to help people get at who they really were. Because we believe at the core of who you are created perfectly. You have the capability to create anything that you want in your life, but we tell ourselves stories that block us. We inherit stories from our family, from society, from friends, from our experiences that block us from our true potential. So with this podcast, I'm actually leaning more into that. I'm leaning into the malware of your mind. And how do you get rid of that? Because at your core, you incarnated into this world for a purpose. You have a divine purpose, something that is greater than the stories that you tell yourself. Part of the core of our life is to get back to that and to, instead of inherit stories from everyone around us, to find the identity of our true selves and manifest from that place, make decisions from that place. Now, manifestation gets thrown around a lot, but really all it is being very conscious in the decisions that you make, the thoughts that you think, the beliefs that operate your world, and operating from a place of clarity. Now, my husband was very involved with the technology called Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono originated in the Hawaiian Islands, and it technically means to make things right. Now, Dr. E. Haleakala Hugh Len was the man who was teaching this, and my husband was one of the people that brought it to greater notoriety. It's incredibly simple, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on Ho'oponopono, but basically, it gets you back to your spiritual self. It gets back to who you really are. And you can practice it very easily with just 4 statements. Those 4 statements are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And through those 4 statements, you start clearing out what Dr. Len used to call data. You start clearing out all of the beliefs, the attitudes, the identities, all of the experiences that block you from who you really are. Now, I want to illustrate this with a recent story. So something happened in my life, and that event caused me to be suspicious. I started to believe that something was true because everything just kind of lined up and a decision was made that didn't make sense. But in the context of a previous conversation I had with someone, it made perfect sense. My mind started racing towards some beliefs that ended up not being true. But operating from that belief, I had to put myself into a place where I had to make a decision. I had to make a decision whether or not I was going to continue on in a friendship based on this decision, based on this erroneous belief. After a conversation, I found out that my suspicions were not true. From the logical standpoint, I believed that it was. And I had put myself on the precipice of making a decision that would have fundamentally changed my life based on a suspicion, based on erroneous information. This is happening all over the place. It's happening for Americans right now who are living in sort of this political situation where we have a deep divide between what the people on the left believe is happening and the people on the right believe is happening. And all of the information, all of the conversations support these 2 very diverse opinions. Now, for me, I don't watch the news. I stay away from all of it. So I live my life. I look for indications of information that might be important to me, but I reserve judgment as much as possible for that primary reason, because erroneous information can come forward and you may base your entire worldview on what you think is true. When we get down to it, the only thing that is true is what is at our core. Underneath the beliefs, underneath all of the data, underneath all of the assumptions that we make about how the world works. Now, what does this have to do with being the leader of your life? Well, if you're going to be making decisions and setting a direction for your life, you have to get back to the core of who you really are. You need to make decisions based upon what is true for you, and only you can decide what that is. You can go read the news. You can go on X or you can go on Facebook and see what all of your friends are posting. You could read the news, the mainstream news, the alternative news. It doesn't matter. Wherever you're getting your information, you put it into context within your mind. And I would like you to consider that maybe all of this is just malware. Maybe the things that we believe so firmly to be true aren't. Here's what happens. We end up starting to make decisions about the things in our world, the people in our lives, even ourselves, and we make those decisions based on erroneous data. Now, you can categorize this into three main areas. We blame things in our circumstances, in the world at large, the amount of time we have, the amount of money we have, things that are happening in our neighborhood. And we make decisions or we set beliefs, we create a context about what we believe to be true, and that feels so real. It feels like it is everything. It feels like these are the constraints of my life. I only have so many hours in the day. I only have so much money. I only have, this neighborhood. I only have this country, this whatever. And we make decisions based upon the circumstances we find ourselves in. What ends up happening, though, is it becomes sort of an enslavement. The beliefs that we hold so dear end up creating structures upon which we make all of our decisions. But if we really look at the core of who we are, these circumstances don't matter. It's just data. And that data is something that we hold so dear. And that data is something that we believe in so strongly. It feels like that is our reality. But it isn't. The reality of who you are is underneath all of the data. It's underneath all of the beliefs that you hold. It's all just data. There was a funny story that happened with Dr. Len and Mark, my husband. And as you know, he's had a stroke, and so now I'm in his email. And I was looking for something, and I came across an email between Dr. Len and Mark. And it was about a situation that was happening sort of in the Ho'oponopono world. And there were some rumors that were being spread about Dr. Len and rumors that were being spread about Mark, and they were completely and totally false. And Dr. Len responded to Mark in one of these conversations and said, "Thanks for letting me know. I'll clean on it," because that's all he would do. His whole take on the beliefs that other people had, the events, the circumstances that surrounded him, was that it was all just data. It wasn't reality. It wasn't who he really was. And so he just cleaned on it. He just used those 4 statements to get back to who he was at his core. I had a situation happen recently where my car was in a little fender bender thanks to my daughter. She's learning how to drive, and of course these things happen. And my car was in the body shop, and they said it would be done on a Wednesday. So I had a rental car for a couple of days, and then it was Thursday, then it was Friday, then it was Saturday, and oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much I wanted my car back until I got to Friday, and I realized that I wasn't going to get my car back, and it was going to take until the next week before I could get my car back. My mind started trying to figure out why. Did something happen to it? Was there a problem? Maybe insurance wasn't paying. All of these things start running through my mind of possible explanations for the circumstance of not getting my precious car back. And all I could do was get curious about it because I couldn't solve the problem. There was a block. There was actual event that was happening, but I couldn't solve it. I couldn't go and repair the car myself. I was stuck in a circumstance, and my mind was looking for an explanation, but every explanation of what might possibly be causing this delay was erroneous. it wasn't true. And I wanted to make a decision based upon those erroneous beliefs. And of course, we look for some kind of explanation of what's going on because we want to have greater control. We want to make a decision based on what's happening and solve a problem. Now, when you are living your life, even if you're running a company, if you're an entrepreneur, this happens all the time. Things happen and a product launch doesn't go the way you'd like it to go, or marketing doesn't land the way you'd like it to go, and you want to find greater control over that experience. But the greatest power we have is to let go, to surrender to the experience that we can't solve and just let go. Let it be whatever it is trying to be and get curious about the block. I wonder why this is happening. And just get curious. That curiosity leads us back to ourselves. It leads us back to that inner self where it just doesn't matter if I get it on Friday or Monday. It doesn't matter if the marketing is landing wrong. It doesn't matter if maybe I said something wrong in a meeting. All of these things don't really matter. Everything that happens to us in life, every single experience, every single thought, every single emotion is just data. But all of that data is doing is showing us where there is an erroneous belief, showing us where the path home is, showing us what we need to let go of in order to get back to who we really are at our core. Because at our core, underneath all of it, is peace. That is where our greatest power is. Now, if we go a little bit closer to who we are and we let go of circumstances, money, time, all of those things, and we get back to the people that are in our lives, oftentimes we can blame something that someone has done or something that we think someone is going to say or do, or a circumstance where we might interpret something someone has said or something someone has done. All of this too is just data. Now, a lot of times people will blame other people for something going on in their lives, or they'll blame another person for why they can't make a decision. Well, I don't think my wife is going to like this, or I don't think that my boss will go for this, whatever it might be. We have these imagined things of what we think someone might say, might do, or we might even react negatively to something that our boss is saying or doing where they're just going through their stuff. And instead of being able to see that, we take it as some kind of definition on us. For example, your boss might be going through a difficult time growing the business or something like that. And so that boss says something in a meeting and you interpret it as you're doing something wrong. If you take a step back and you really look at that person, you might then be able to see that it is their stuff. It is their attempts at working through their own emotions, at their attempts at working through their own beliefs that is actually happening when they're talking in a meeting. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you. The greatest thing you can do is to surrender. Send good thoughts to your boss that they can solve the problem that they're going through. Because 95% of the times, it's really not even about you. I've even heard many spiritual teachers talk about some of the thoughts that we have, like 90% of the thoughts that you have aren't even your thoughts. And definitely, those thoughts are not something that are coming from your inner core. They aren't coming from your inner spirit. These are things that we've inherited from beliefs from our peers, beliefs from our superiors, from our teachers, or very common from our parents. We inherit these things and we think that these patterns, these programs that are running in our mind are actually the truth of a situation when they really have nothing to do with who you really are. When you get to your core self, that is where you are empowered. When you can start letting go of the programming that you've picked up from everywhere else, from the news media, from friends, bosses, superiors, wherever, parents, wherever it's come from, when you can let go of all of that and get to the core of who you really are, you can start to see everyone around you much more clearly because you realize they're going through stuff too. They have their programming that they've inherited from other places, and they are also going through the process of getting back to their core self. When you get to your core self, there, you're actually probably going to find much more peace. You know, the shower thoughts that happen, downloads that happen, and you just have this realization, oh, this person said this thing because they're going through that other thing. It has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with our friendship, nothing to do with anything that's really going on. And then you can just help them by cleaning on whatever they're going through, almost a prayer towards them, that they can find the clearing, the peace, and the surrender to who they really are. That really is the core of our entire journey. If you get to the core of who you really are, there's another layer. You have your circumstances on the outside, and then you have other people. But at the core of who you really are, there's another layer that surrounds that piece within you. And that's the beliefs and the identity that you have about yourself. Now, you might say, well, I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, and you define yourself. Or you might say, I'm a Texan, or I am a Chicagoan. Whatever identity you identify yourself as, your job title, mom, dad, daughter, sister, husband, all of these identities that we have that define who we really are can be extremely limiting, because who we are underneath all of that has nothing to do with the roles that we play. But if you're a husband, you probably have some beliefs about what that means. What does it mean to be a husband? What does it mean to be a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim? Whatever it is, we take on these definitions of identity that a lot of times come from these outer layers of circumstance and other people's beliefs. And then we apply them to ourselves. And that can be a prison at times too. We enslave ourselves to this identity of I have to be a certain way, a belief that we have that we have to be a certain way because of the role that we have, or because of the job we have, but even by the car that we drive or the political party that we believe in. But underneath all of that, there is another part of you, that core part that is clear and clean of any of those beliefs. In order to get movement in your life, in order to solve problems, in order to manifest the life that you want to live, in order to create the things that you want to live, you have to make decisions. You have to change what you believe about yourself. And it really means peeling back all of these layers of our circumstances, of the world we live in, of the people that are around us, and all of the definitions that we place on ourselves, because it's all data. It really doesn't matter when it gets down to the spirituality of who you really are. So how do you get there? How do you get to the spiritual self? Well, the things that get in the way are our thoughts, our emotions, which come from our thoughts, and our beliefs. All of this programming that we self-select sometimes, or that we've inherited from others, that's all programs that are on top of the operating system that is much more pure. Our spiritual self does not have all of these beliefs. Our spiritual self doesn't matter, what you ascribe to. Our spiritual self, the part of you that you find in meditation, or that you find when you're out walking and thoughts just start popping that are much more clear, that is your spiritual self. To get there, we can go into meditation, but if your mind is racing with thoughts, one of the first things that you can do is identify the separation between your thoughts and your emotions and the core self. Now, we have a problem with our language. We say things like, I am angry, but you're not angry. You are you. I am Kathy. I am deeper beyond Kathy. I am a higher self that doesn't even have a name. It might somewhere in another realm, but we are not our emotions. But our language is designed to identify so much with our emotional states. We'll say, I am angry, but you're not. I feel angry. That is not you, though. Emotions are very transient. They come in, trash the place for a while, and then they move on to the next thing. You are not your emotions. Emotions come in, but they are a guidepost. An emotion traces back to a thought, and that thought traces back to a belief. To get really clear, your thoughts are basically mile markers. They are basically signposts that tell you where your blocks are. Because if you are feeling a negative emotion, if you're feeling angry, depressed, sad, any of those things, if those feelings have taken residence in your mind, they are the things that will guide you to a thought. What thought is creating that, and how true is that thought? How can you find out more information that can help you change a belief that you have about a circumstance so that you can find freedom freedom from that emotional state, because you are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are not even your beliefs. You are something much deeper and much more powerful than that. When you start to separate yourself from your thoughts and your emotions, you gain power over them. You can then now choose better thoughts. You can choose better emotional states. You are not a victim to those emotions, to those thoughts, or those beliefs, because you realize that those are flexible, free things, different programs that you can wipe out like malware and replace with a clean program, replace with a clean belief. Instead of having a negative emotion of depression and sadness because this circumstance is happening in your life, you can start to reframe that experience so you see it in a different light. Take, for example, somebody who has lost their job and they're extremely sad and depressed about it, and they have all of these fears coming in about what's going to happen next. Where's my next job going to come from? Where's the next paycheck? It can be extremely debilitating when that circumstance comes in. But when you realize that the circumstance doesn't have power over your core self, the thoughts and beliefs that you're having about that circumstance don't have power over your core self, then your core self can look at that situation and see it completely differently. I wonder where the next job is going to come from. I wonder what I'm going to do next. I wonder what next big opportunity is going to land in my lap, because I'm letting people know that I'm free and I'm open for a new opportunity, and it would have never shown up if you didn't lose that job. Everything is conspiring in your favor. The universe is conspiring. There's a belief system called pronoia instead of paranoia. Pronoia is choosing beliefs and thoughts and the resultant emotional states that believes that the universe is conspiring in your favor, that everything is always working out for you, even if you're soaking in it and you just can't see it yet, because at your core self realizes that all of these experiences are transient, that they are not real, that time itself is a construct, space is a construct. All of these things in our reality aren't real. The only thing that is true and real is consciousness. But we get so hypnotized into believing that things are true when none of it is. The only thing that is true is that you are love and you are created as a creator. So what can you do with this realization when you get to it? When you realize that all of your beliefs and all of your thoughts, all of the things that are happening in your life aren't even true, then you become the leader of your life. You become spiritually directed, because you get curious about what could possibly happen next. It doesn't matter what's happening that seems so solid and seems so limiting. You start wondering what might happen next. You start thinking, I wonder if this could happen. Or, you know what, I would really like if this other thing would happen. Instead of feeling like a victim to the things that are happening in your life, you start feeling like the leader of your life. You start making decisions, you start thinking thoughts, you start believing different things because you realize who you really are at your core. The whole idea of pronoia is empowering because you realize the truth of who you are. You realize that you are a spirit having a physical experience rather than a human that also has this spiritual side. You are the spirit. You are leading your life from a spiritual place. I hope this discussion has helped you think about your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, and your life experience in a different way. Because at your core, you are free. At your core, you are the leader. The only thing that stands in between you and the life of your dreams is a shift in perspective, is a shift in belief about yourself. And that shift can happen in an instant. They call them breakthroughs. And these breakthroughs happen when you realize what power you do have in choosing different thoughts and beliefs by getting rid of the malware in your mind. That's it for me for ZANTASTIC episode 11. 11. It's 1111. It's one of those magic numbers. I hope that this episode brought you some magic, and we will see you next time.